That's why. Hmm? Yeah, he's eating. Very good. From not on the CEO.
Ma parte aspetta. Hello? Allora, questo non è come si dalle? Porta un micro. Questo non può. Stanno comandando.
Very casual. I love it. Yeah. I absolutely love it. I now like him more. He doesn't deny where he started in the forest. Yeah. Yeah. I've yeah, everything I've read about him, I've actually liked the science fiction.
Countdown. Our lights are bright. Okay. Fantastic. Can everybody hear me? It's always a concern with technology, but we seem to be doing marvellously. All the sessions I've been in, haven't had a technical hitch. So it's great that I can hear you and that we're all hearing each other. So thank you very much for coming and joining us for this event. I thought on Monday it would start calming down a little bit, but it seems to have got busier and busier and more exciting and more exciting. So it's there's many events that are going on and a great array of stuff. So welcome. So my name's Chris Buss. I'm the director of the IUCN Forest Conservation Programme, and I would like to welcome you to this event on the Restoration Initiative. The Restoration Initiative and efforts heading in to the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration. For those of you unfamiliar with the Restoration Initiative, or TREE as we start calling it, we live in a world of acronyms, but I always like it when they actually make sense. So TREE is the largest ongoing supported GEF initiative on restoration, covering 10 countries in Asia and Africa, with over 250 million in project grants and mobilised co-financing, and implemented in partnership with IUCN, FAO and UNEP. Launched in 2018, we're midway through implementation. So it's great that you can join us this afternoon and this evening to hear about that implementation and hear about that drive for action, and hear about the different models, tools and evidence a real-world experience on restoration implementation. Um, I'm honoured to be joined by Carlos Manuel Rodriguez, who's the CEO of Jeff, and will share his insights and Jeff's support for restoration, not through just only tree, but beyond. And then following Carlos Manuel's address, we have a presentation from Christophe Bezier and Benjamin Derrida from FAO on the tree program, the country work and the key achievements to date. And then we'll be handing over to more of an informal panel with some of the country teams, where we have the Honourable Mohamed Elmi, the Vice Minister of Environment and Forestry for Kenya, Malik Amin Aslam Sahib, the Federal Minister for Pakistan and Advisor to the Prime Minister on Climate Change, and Lorenzo Antonio Vaz, the Deputy Minister of Environment for Guinea-Bissau. So I'm going to hand straight over to you, Carlos Manuel, because we've got everyone here, we're all ready to go, and we want to hear about the action and where Jeff's taking us.
Thanks, Chris, and real pleasure to be here this afternoon. I've been, kind of running up and down in many events, and I had the great opportunity to share some of my late night dinner conversation with my kids in the many different events. And one of those conversations I had recently with my kids was regarding, of course, their future and their future professional career. And they said to me, a couple of my sons said to me, I want to work in conservation on this species and that forest. And I had to tell them that I had a few bad news. My kids' generation won't be working in conservation as I did as a young kid and throughout my full career. They will be working in restoration. I think I presented it as a bad news to them, but then I realized that is as encouraging and stimulating as it was for me as a kid to really, work on conservation. Restoration is a huge challenge. It's a huge agenda, and I don't have any doubts that my kids are going to work in restoration, in restoring the health of the planet, in restoring the landscapes, in restoring hope to the people, in restoring optimism, and being able to connect once more with our very fundamental principles and values with regards to that relationship with nature. And the restoration agenda is extremely important for all the above reasons, but also is extremely important because without a very strong, well-focused, large restoration, we will never achieve the climate and the biodiversity goals and targets. We will never achieve the 1.5. We will never achieve the 30%. Nevertheless, we need to really understand the restoration challenge in a couple of areas that I want to share with you all today. One is, what do we want to restore and the quality of the restoration? That's a very important element. I come from a country, Costa Rica, that everybody sees as a green nation, as a high biodiversity nation. Well, that is partially true. In Costa Rica, I strongly believe that we should be recognized as the world restoration champion of the world, of the planet. Well, they see us as a great leader in conservation. Well, yes, but they don't understand that 40 years ago, we basically destroyed most of our forests, landscapes, watersheds. And we were forced by the impact of degraded lands and landscapes and limited livelihood opportunities to begin restoring the landscapes. In 1985, when I was 25 years old, we were left with just 22% of the original forest in Costa Rica. And today, we got 54, 55% of the territory with forest. As everybody is committed to preserve 30%, Costa Rica is committed to go by 2030, 60% forest cover, without competing where we produce our food, without competing where we produce our energy, without competing on where we live. As a matter of fact, the restoration has been a very positive economic stimulus for growth and prosperity because we clear the forests of large parts of the country without even understanding that the soils were not suitable for agriculture and productive activities. And we had to learn the hard way. We were able to double the size of our forest cover at the same time that the economy tripled and the population doubled. So the takeaway message from Costa Rica is that protecting and restoring is not a burden for economic growth. It is not contradictory. It's not a contradiction in terms of our social and economic aspiration. And even though I cannot make the correlationship within recovering the forest cover and growth, at least I know that it was not a burden for growth at all. And it helped us a lot to really generate balances within the agriculture and the forest conservation agenda, which is one of the key elements. So that's one key element that I wanted to share with you. The other is, as we embark in this project, is a fabulous opportunity to prove the case for the GF, for the implementing agencies, and for the country on how do we learn to do high quality restoration. High quality in terms of biodiversity, high quality in terms of soil improvement and restoration of soils, high quality in terms of carbon, and of course, high quality in terms of human development. Because we can easily, the GF can easily finance a large army of people to plant trees in the landscape. But this is what we really want? Well, at least this is what I have seen in Latin America and Africa, where we hire a lot of people and plant eucalyptus all over the place. And I think that we learned the hard way that that's not a good, cost-effective way of doing restoration. In Costa Rica, we learned that if we give a hand to Mother Nature and we understand ecology and tropical biology, it can be the same way in other places, in other different biomes. If we can lend a hand to nature, nature will restore the ecosystem quicker and cheaper than we can imagine. Our only main focus in landscape restoration in Costa Rica is dealing with forest fire. We were able to learn how to work and manage forest fires, and we were able to understand how do we give a hand to nature. We learn how trees are dispersed by birds and mammals, and we accelerate that process. And investing heavily on forest fires control by working with civil societies in creating a positive incentive for land restoration. People in Costa Rica are being paid for the carbon sequestration, the biodiversity conservation, and the water services they produce in the restoration process. How? Well, we put a tax on fossil fuels, which is something that we need to understand uh, as we think on ways by which we can mobilize domestic resources more efficiently. We put a tax on fossil fuels in 1997. Today generates $32 million, and people in the landscapes are being paid for going from old pasture lands and old cattle ranches, very low production, very inefficient, into a restoration process. And as you restore, you're providing carbon, biodiversity, and water services, and people are being paid. And we match the cost of opportunity of doing cattle ranches, so we create positive incentives, and the rest is, the rest is good management and good engagement. At the GF, we understand that in the next decade, we need to restore more than what has already been committed. Globally, we need to restore 4 billion hectares of degraded landscapes, and we need to protect 4 billion hectares of forests, not just tropical forests, temperate and boreal forests. And we're committed to work with countries, to work with our agencies, to work in this great partnership to mobilize solutions. Solutions from the technical point of view, solutions from the financial point of view. The commitments of nations and agencies to restore is really exciting. And yes, I can tell my kids that they will be working in restoration and it will be as pleasant as it was in working in conservation of biodiversity. So Chris, thank you so much for the opportunity. Looking forward to continue engage with the agencies and the stakeholders and the countries in this large endeavor of landscape restoration.
Thank you, Carlos. And thank you for the Jeff leadership that you've shown on restoration, but also Costa Rica's leadership. I had the privilege of going to the region that we're in here, who have a partnership with Costa Rica, and have also pledged to the Bond Challenge. So your footprint is everywhere, and we're in a region that is now also committed to restore their degraded lands. So thank you very much for coming. You and I can leave now and leave with Christophe and Benjamin to give more details. But thank you for coming, and Christophe, over to you.
Thank you, Carlos Manuel, for your inspiring message. I will jump now a bit more in details on this restoration initiative mentioned by Chris and Carlos Manuel. This restoration initiative aims to fostering innovation and integration in support of the Bond Challenge. The Bond Challenge is a commitment launched in 2011 with a strong support from Germany and the Ministry of Environment in Germany. And now the commitment is to restore 350 million hectares by 2030. And in the context of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, launched in June this year, hopefully we will mobilize human resources and partners and donors to move forward this challenge. To date, the Restoration Initiative is the largest ongoing GEF finance program supporting restoration. The objective is to contribute to the restoration and the maintenance of critical landscapes, to provide global environmental benefits, to enhance resilience, economic development, livelihood, and to support the Bond Challenge. It's a 5-year program. We started in 2018. The implementation, $59 million of funds from GEF, plus $200 million of co-finance. 10 ASEAN and African countries on board, and implementing arrangement with IUCN, FAO, and UN Environment on board, including also all executing agencies at country level. We have 11 national child projects and 1 global coordination project to support and provide methods, tools to the country teams. On this map, you can see that we have 4 projects led by IUCN in China, Myanmar, Cameroon, and Guinea-Bissau. 5 projects led by FAO in Pakistan, DRC, Republic Democratic of Congo, Central African Republic, Sao Tome and Principe, and Pakistan, and Kenya, sorry. And 2 projects led by UN Environment in Kenya and Tanzania. The programmatic design, the idea is to have a common framework for the national project, with the idea to address 4 main components. 1 component on policy, enabling environment, to create the condition at national level to implement restoration at scale. Build capacity, to work on finance and to help countries to mobilize financial resources, both from the public and private sector. And knowledge sharing and partnership, to disseminate success story. The global project is providing access to information, tools, technical support, coordination of work. We have a community of practice. We are organizing, in the context of COVID, of course, a lot of webinars, even if initially we were supposed to have also regional workshops and global workshops, annual meetings. This year and last year, we were obliged to manage online. And we are trying to harmonize the monitoring and evaluation framework and several other activities. The 4 components are trying to provide benefits both in terms of livelihood. We are trying to have restoration activities focused on the generation of incomes for the population. We want to promote healthy landscape carbon sequestration, and biodiversity. Just few words on what we are considering as key in terms of concept for forest and landscape restoration. First, forest landscape restoration is supposed to provide multiple benefits in the landscape. You can provide rich and stable soils, biodiversity, drinking water, carbon storage, food and security, recreation and ecotourism, provision of non-wood forest product and wood forest product. For doing that, we have multiple options, not only planting trees, as said by Carlos Manuel, but we can promote assisted natural regeneration in the slope, of course, tree plantation of local species in some area, agroforestry, climate-smart agriculture, natural regeneration in buffer zone of national parks, sustainable management of forest and tree in specific area, etc. So forest and landscape restoration, it's clearly not just planting trees. I will give the floor now to Benjamin, who will present to you a very brief picture of each country project to give you the diversity of what we are doing under this initiative. Ben, you have the floor.
Thank you, Christophe. So my name is Benjamin de Ridder. I work at the Forest Landscape Restoration Mechanism of FAO based in Rome. And I'm also providing technical support to 3 of the FAO projects at country level. And it's really a pleasure for me to be here with you today live in person, because we had so much a whole year of events online, so it's nice to really talk in person about what's happening on the ground. Also, this short presentation will give you some snapshots of the countries. We'll go into some themes, so it's in no means meant to be exhaustive, because there's too much going on. So the first project is in Cameroon. It's really supporting landscape restoration and sustainable use of local plant species and tree products for biodiversity conservation and sustainable livelihoods and emission reduction. It's one of the smaller projects in terms of financial, but it's with a huge potential of impact, as it's really focusing a lot on the non-timber forest product value chain. So it's really looking at working to develop the bamboo value chain with local communities. And for that reason, 8 nurseries were established for the propagation of this bamboo and other high-value tree species. And I think they already have 80,000 trees established through the nurseries. They also have a lot of training ongoing with local stakeholders on networking and trying to build the business case for marketing this bamboo and the other important tree species, and also to develop the business skills from the local stakeholders on this value chain. Also, of course, 140 stakeholders have been trained on different agroforestry techniques to really put in place these different plantations. Another project is in Central African Republic. It's implemented by FAO. It's one of our larger projects. It's really in a specific context, because the Central African Republic is coming from many years of unrest. So the importance of this project is really to build the resilience of local communities through supporting building of livelihoods and through the restoration of landscapes. So far, there's a lot of been awareness raising on restoration in terms of agroecology, agroforestry, and also a lot of effort went into participatory mapping and identification of the restoration sites, as well as there has been an ongoing public-private partnership between the Ministry of Environment and a private sector company, and we're trying also to work with them to really leverage additional funding and the capacity to support agroforestry plantations with the local population. Also in collaboration, because as we said, restoration is only feasible with a lot of partners and partnerships. So also we're working with CIRAD to look at the wood energy supply system for the capital of Bangui. In China, it's also a project with a lot of potential. It's managed by IUCN. It's really building resilient green infrastructure with a focus on ecosystem services of planted forests through forest landscape restoration and governance. So they have been really working on improving and establishing forest management plans, integrating restoration into it. So they established 7 of these plans for pilot SFS, state forest farms, with a really large scale acreage, 150,000, 720 hectares on the restoration, so it's huge. and also because of the numbers of actual state forest farms in China, it's really a good stepping stone for large-scale upscaling of this approach. They also have developed 3 draft forest landscape restoration plans for 3 countries, and also trained people from different provinces on FLR techniques. Other project is a project in Democratic Republic of Congo in South Kivu province in the east of DRC. It's managed by FAO. It's also a particular context of a landscape with a variety of agriculture, small agricultural landscapes, a lot of slopes, hills. It's in the buffer zone from the Kahuzi-Biega National Park, famous for its biodiversity, amongst it the mountain gorillas. There's a lot of pressure of the population and density and agriculture. So a lot of effort went into participatory assessment of the restoration opportunities and sites within 2 chiefdoms of the province. They also established 90 Dimitar clubs where really focus is on community-based restoration and awareness raising, as well as a partnership with the universities, local universities, to establish an independent observatory to ensure that the restoration interventions can be monitored effectively with the help of the latest technologies. The next project is in Guinea-Bissau, where the focus is really on the coastal areas, on protecting and restoration of mangrove ecosystems and the productive landscapes around it for strengthening food security and mitigation of climate change. They're also focusing a lot on piloting and scaling up of participatory community-led restoration actions, improving the governance, including support of a national law on mangrove conservation and restoration, as well as participatory mapping and identification of the priority sites for restoration. Also key is there the community involvement in all these aspects. Then the next project, we've got 2 projects that you could hear in the beginning in Kenya. One is led by FAO, and it's focusing on the arid and semi-arid landscapes in Kenya, in Mount Kulal and Mogogoda Forest. The angle there is really on developing the bio-enterprise business case for restoration and incentives. We are working hand in hand with UNEP in Kenya and different partners, and we supported the government to develop a national forest landscape restoration implementation action plan to really guide scaling up of restoration throughout the country, and downscaling at the county level. We're also strengthening the local community forest associations and community land management committees to really strengthen their skills to establish restoration plans and integrate into the management plans of the areas and to scale it up. For example, we have more than 42,000 hectares of community conservancies and 51,000 hectares of the Mount Kulal ecosystem now under improved management, which supported the project. And also here we're looking at developing really as I said, the business case for non-timber forest projects. So there we also did an opportunity assessment and we developed a training program to really bring the business case to the local communities so they can really have the sustainable livelihood depending on the land and the restoration angle and the sustainable landscape management. The second project in Kenya is focusing on the Tana Delta ecosystem. They're really looking at the enhancing integrated natural resource management to arrest the reverse current trends in biodiversity loss due to increased pressure in the Tana Delta, and which caused a lot of land degradation, and also to ensure there's an increase of ecosystem services. There also a lot of has been happening on strengthening the governance mechanisms, both in agriculture and pastoral lands, for using the village natural resource land use committees. 6,000 hectares have been put under improved management and restoration. Under restoration, and 48,000 hectares of forest have brought under improved management. They also created indigenous community conservation areas, again using really the local bottom-up approach with the communities, and they reached already 25,000, more than 25,000 beneficiaries. 60% of them were really focusing on women and gender to really ensure sustainable income-generating activities are promoted through sustainable land management practices. And as well, in collaboration with FAO, we work together to train county and local communities on identifying the best sites and the best options for restoration through the restoration opportunity assessment methodology. The next project is in Myanmar, It's also managed by IUCN with the local national partners. It's also focusing on the dry areas of Myanmar and trying to reverse the forest degradation and deforestation through local multi-stakeholder management. You see, in most of the project is really this anchor of local stakeholder engagement. Also here, they carried out Rome assessment and training of 360 stakeholders, and they identified 29 priority areas for restoration. They also identified priorities in 6 townships together with the government partners for restoration action, as well as looking at the cost-benefit analysis of these options to really prioritize what kind of systems they would use primarily for restoration. An example was given, they will really promote Stacuria versicolor plantations because they have really good return on investment at the local level. The next project managed by FAO is in Pakistan. It's looking at reversing the deforestation and degradation in the high conservation value Chikosa pine forest in Pakistan. It's a lot of effort and aim to develop the non-timber forest product value chain. And in this case, is the pine nut, because there's a large global market for it. They also they carried out already a kind of a restoration opportunity assessment at district level. They developed functional forest management plans for district, Sharana district. They also set up the Chikosa Forest Protection Community Committees in 14 locations. They also identified 48 sites for assisted natural regeneration, covering 2,420 hectares. And also they really continues to study and work on the value chain development for the Chizona pine nut. The other country is managed by FAO is Sao Tome and Principe. Is looking at landscape restoration for ecosystem functionality and climate change mitigation. Their important aspects have been carried out to really think about sustainable financing for forest and landscape restoration. It's important aspect to highlight for this project is because it's meant that it's identified globally as a key barrier for scaling up restoration. It is lack of financing and credit for businesses, smallholders, small to medium enterprises. So in Sao Tome and Principe, they have a partnership with the Association of Banks and the Central Bank to advance really this program of getting better access to financial services and products, and developing also a kind of sort of code of conduct for environmentally sound investment at business level and at farm level. The next country is Tanzania, is managed by UNEP, and they also is looking at implementation of integrated ecosystem management approach for landscape restoration and biodiversity. It's one of the largest 3 projects of the program. They were a little bit delayed in starting implementation, but they are catching up quite quickly. They also did a lot of training of key government stakeholders on a range of different policy and monitoring tools for restoration. They also used a rapid restoration assessment methodology to really identify quickly the project areas for implementation and look at what aspects, which areas were key for biodiversity conservation together with local communities. I think I will now hand over the floor to my colleague Christophe for the global support.
Yeah, thank you. Just before showing to you a few videos, I want to present a few things about the partnership we have for the global project that is supporting the national teams. We have a partnership with Bridge for Billion to support the development of business model and to support national partners to move from one idea of project to a bankable business attractive for investor. It's a kind of incubator helping to support project promoter to develop the business. We have a partnership with ELTI, the Yale University, for online support and trainings. We supported several ones. We have a partnership with Biodiversity International to support forest genetic resources issues. To restore, we need to have for genetic resources, and we need to have nurseries, etc. We are working a lot with World Research Institute for the development of monitoring tools, etc. And of course, the global level is providing a framework to share knowledge. So we have a newsletter led by IUCN. We have a year-in-review report published every year. We are almost ready to release the 2020 year-in-review report. And we are trying to help the national partners to share knowledge, both at national level, but also to bring the story at the global level. And on this occasion, also, we will have the World Forestry Congress in Seoul next year, with a lot of countries and a lot of events invited to join, and they will be able to tell themselves their story in the context of the forestry community of practice. I think now we have few videos to illustrate those things, and before the panel. Thank you.
Warm greetings to the World Conservation Congress participants. My name is Jonathan Gessens, and on behalf of UNEP, I coordinate the global finance components of the Restoration Initiative. My sincere apologies for not being able to be here with you in Marseille. As you all know, there's an urgent need to accelerate the number of restoration initiatives around the world to achieve international objectives on restoration, as exemplified by the ongoing UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. We collectively have to prevent, halt, and reverse the degradations of ecosystems on every continent and every ocean. In that context, the Restoration Initiative is a unique opportunity to turn this imperative into reality, using technology and strategic partnerships to create innovative restorative solutions and to help them scale by unlocking finance. This requires to work with restorative models that have proven economic potential through clear value proposition and stable income streams from agriculture, forestry, carbon, as well as other ecosystem services. To that end, TRI has partnered with the social enterprise Bridge for Billions to launch the Restoration Factory, a mentorship program that pairs restoration entrepreneurs with mentors from the private sector to design and test new models of eco-development. Using technology, project developers are able to receive bespoke guidance from experts from all over the world at a fraction of the cost, making tailor-made support possible at scale. We are convinced approaches like this will pave the way for successful finance mobilization efforts and the deployment of restoration globally. I wish you a great and interesting conference, and thank you for having me today.
Anne Kirobi is a 47-year-old mother of 5 children and a resident of Sanga village. Anne is busy searching and uprooting herbal medicine inside Mukogodo forest. Anne, a herbalist, has been doing this work for the last 11 years.
Hii kazi unaandamana na system ya asali, kwa sababu unatoa, unachemsha, unaweka awe baridi, sasa unaweka asali. Hiyo dawa ikitengeneza unauzia jirani na pia jamii yangu unatumia.
A few miles away we meet Nicholas Kodei. He is a 56-year-old beekeeper in Mukogodo forest. The father of 8 and a resident of Arjijo village shares his frustrations and the challenges that have been facing the forest in recent years.
There is a lot of encroachment in the forest. There is underground growth which used to have a lot of honey, but we don't have them now.
Nicholas and Anne are part of the larger Mukogodo community who draw their livelihood from this forest.
Hii forest tunafurahia sana, inasaidia kutoa dawa, na hii dawa ilikuwa ni nzuri, unasaidia watu sana.
One unique aspect about Mukogodo forest, even though it is a gazetted forest, the government has allowed the local communities, the indigenous communities, to utilize and conserve the forest.
But this is being threatened by deforestation and land degradation occasioned by population pressure, overgrazing, charcoal burning and other excessive use of its natural resources by the communities. It is for this reason that FAO Kenya, together with other partners, and with funding from the Global Environment Facility, started implementing a restoration initiative project in Mukogodo.
The project has got some low-lying fruits in terms of bio-enterprises in these areas that we are trying to develop that can incentivize the local communities to continue with restoration in a more sustainable manner.
The restoration project also involved 4 community rangelands surrounding Mukogodo, namely the Ilngwesi, Makurian, Kurkuri and Lerkuk, and the 4 came together to form the Ilmamusi Community Forest Association.
We have a membership of 49 members, and the members have well-coordinated and organized forest user groups.
Each group is actively involved in the restoration of the forest.
Mi natunza hii msitu yetu kwa sababu ikikauka unakosa dawa.
The project has also strengthened the governance structures of the CFA, and this has led to several achievements in the restoration process.
So far we have been able to establish 6 nurseries. We have been able also to train the various stakeholders who are working around Mukogodo, from the county government to NGOs to the communities, and also then training the conservancies which are surrounding the forest.
With these interventions, FAO aims to reduce the overall proportion of degraded land by at least 20% with the support of key partners, namely the Kenya Forestry Research Institute, the National Museums of Kenya, the Laikipia Wildlife Forum, the Northern Rangelands Trust, the Kenya Forestry Service, and the county government. Indeed, with Mukogodo's survival, so will the livelihoods of Nicholas Kodei, Anne Kirobi, among others, and their well-being be restored.
The Tana Delta is a site of global significance as a key biodiverse area. The Tana Delta is a Ramsar site. The Tana Delta is a site where people, wildlife, agriculture, fishing meet, and the Tana Delta is unprotected. Key issue for conservation in the Tana Delta is unsustainable land management, inappropriate access by developers, and generally increasingly degraded environment. 3 main approaches are used in order to address this. Remove policy barriers by developing policy and institutional frameworks to support sustainable land management with restoration. 2, engage in restoration initiatives and the capacity building of actors to restore degraded areas. 3, develop innovative financing to attract green businesses to come and invest in ways that are aligned with sustainable land management, guided by the land use plan. Nature Kenya has successfully modeled an approach of mainstreaming restoration into society through villages who have formed village natural resource and land use committees. They have collected 6 tons of seed and have seeded this seed. If all of them were to germinate and become trees, this would be an effort resulting to 6,000 hectares in one season. This is restoration at scale. With the support from stakeholders, we expect at the end of this project, the Tana Delta will have been put into sustainable footing where communities, people, wildlife will be living in harmony. 116,000 hectares indigenous community conservation area is now being registered to become a conservancy. Nature Kenya is grateful to the Global Environment Facility and the United Nations Environment Program for the opportunity to engage stakeholders to save the Tana Delta. It is second to Okavango in terms of significance. This project is going to generate lessons that are going to benefit other deltaic ecosystems in Kenya, and the Ala Swamp in Lake Victoria is already benefiting, aligned with the work in the Tana Delta.
Great. Am I back on? I have one of these fancy mics, and I stood at the back, and I didn't want you to hear me talking. So is it working? Perfect. It's okay. Great. Great. Thank you very much, and thank you, Christophe and Benjamin, for fascinating presentations on country, not just the program itself, but the country examples and a range of country examples. Actually, I was facilitating a meeting this morning on the hot topics of restoration, and that was so inspiring of the different types of restoration there's for the pandemic, for biodiversity, for peace, a range of suite of options. And what we saw today was also in Kenya, the different ecosystems that are being restored, Pakistan, the use of the products coming out of restoration, and then in Guinea-Bissau, that also the restoration around the primary land use. Quite often we look at the second or third tiers of products that are coming out from the restoration, but there's also that multifunctionality to restore around your primary land use, and that's a great example of that. So now I'd love to go into some discussion with the panel and hopefully bring on any questions. So Malik and Mohammed, if you would like to come to the front. We will also be joined remotely by Lorenzo, as I introduced earlier, and Justin from Guinea-Bissau, and we can have a conversation about the success of your restoration, the challenges of your restoration initiatives, and where have you gone through. So I'm a bit lost on where are we. Fantastic. So we have you on stage. I might just go and move over there, and so I can see you as well. So sorry. But we'll start just at the front, Mohammed, and perhaps you can give some background to the reasons for your success of restoration, and where you see the benefits you've had from the restoration initiative, and where you see restoration going in the future.
I think people can hear. Okay, sorry. I think the main one, first, is that Kenya, we committed to 5.1 million hectares. And there are a number of restoration programs like this one. This is a project that has been funded that everybody has seen. For me, the challenge is what Costa Rica did. I just want to go straight to, if we're going to have, okay, let me go first the experiences. The partnership is key, and the communities being at the center of it, and the local government is key. That's one of the lessons that has been learned. Restoration approach, again, site matching, so what you're doing must be match the site. There's a lot of emphasis on trees, but then, trying to intervene, yet there's the natural regeneration if the area is protected for some time. Coordination, particularly the use of common language, monitoring, and all that is critical. Then there is the challenge of actually Kenya, 70% is arid and semi-arid, and some parts of it is desert. So the challenge of actually restoring those rangelands, particularly which are seen as remote, the emphasis of insecurity, and that remains a challenge, although Mount Kulal is really up in the north. The other one is sustainability. When we have a number of projects like this one in mangrove in different parts of the country, when the projects withdraw, how do you sustain? And that's why then I think the two things will be critical. That it is a community centered, and that, but more importantly, if we are to go the Costa Rica way, getting to mobilize the whole population and its politicians to say this cannot continue. Our president our constitution says we must have 10% tree cover by 2030, and our president said no, let's have it by 2022, and set money aside to plant 2 billion trees within the last by next year. And the major challenges is at World Landscape, getting the seedlings in place and doing all that. But I like the one of how do you mobilize the whole country? How do you make sure the money is available? And I like the idea of taxing the pollutions and things like that. So what I would actually say is, if we are going to achieve the Bond Challenge of 100 million acres in Africa, then we just have to think of how to scale up. So lessons are there. It works well when communities are involved, when the local government is involved, and they actually see the benefits directly when they are the ones leading it, and when they have government to support them, because I know of communities where they protected the land, the grass comes, and because they are nomadic, another group comes in and says, we don't listen to you, and they grazed on the area where they wanted to protect. That requires then government intervention to stop the other groups. So I think that's all I would say for the now. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you, and good luck by 2022. I think that's a great ambition, and to see, I think I was on a couple of panels where there was a lot of discussion about urgency, and the urgency not just for the climate change emergency, but the urgency to restore our land functionality. Malik, it's a very similar question to you. As you've, Pakistan's got a fantastic, ambitious target. How do you see that scaling? How do you see action scaling up? We heard some of the challenges about getting community engagement from Mohammed, and how do you get the resources and materials to actually achieve your commitments? How is Pakistan moving towards achieving that?
Thanks a lot, Chris. And Pakistan actually started on this trip towards a nature positive pathway in 2014. And the first target that we had set for ourselves, which was at that time a very big target for us, was to plant 1 billion trees in one of the provinces. And we matched that up by also taking up a voluntary pledge under the Bond Challenge for restoring 350,000 hectares of degraded forest. So we set on that journey 2014, and we achieved that target in 2018 in one of our provinces. And it was a remarkable journey because it really brought out some very important lessons that we learned in the process. The most important lesson that we learned was that when you put your trust in nature, nature always pays you back. And that's what we've seen in the TRI project in the Chalgoza Pine territory of Pakistan and Balochistan, where we saw that when we started investing in nature, we saw that that forest started producing a produce of Chalgoza pines, which was really priceless. The global price for that has gone up from being $10 a kg to $100 a kg. So for the local communities, it's really become a bread earner. But that all happened not because we wanted to get this bread, but because we wanted to put our trust in nature. And that's the real story behind all of this success. In 2018, the same party which was in that province also came to power in the federal government. And now we could do this all over Pakistan. So we started on another bigger target, which is now a 10 billion tree tsunami target. It has got 7 different parts because it deals with 7 different ecological zones. So it ranges from the mangroves in the south to scrub forests and riverine forests in the central part of Pakistan, to scaling up the plantation forests in Punjab, which is one of the largest provinces, and then going into the alpine forests in the north of Pakistan. But the 4 key lessons that we learned in the first billion plantation initiative were these. I mean, the first one was that we really have to have a zero tolerance towards the timber logging mafia. That was a mafia that used to, really thrive on cutting trees and selling trees and on the timber business. So the political will is very important. It has to be behind you for you to succeed. And we did have that, and we still have that in Pakistan, because our Prime Minister is totally behind this initiative. And, he's just a SMS away whenever something happens, and immediate action is taken. And that message of zero tolerance has gone down through the system, to the department, to the forestry networks, that, this is the government which is serious about protecting nature. Number 2 was that we have to get the right stakeholders on board. And, as the videos showed, unless you get the local communities to become guardians of your initiative, it will not succeed. And how we did that was that we withdrew the forest department, and we organized the community and gave them the jobs of the forest department. And we called them what is called Negeban, which is a nature protector in our language. So these were nature protectors who were getting the same pay that a forest guard used to get, but they were from the local community. It was their forest, they were protecting it. So they got involved. The second stakeholders were the youth. I think Pakistan is a very young country. 65% of Pakistan is youth. And we put our trust in the youth and involved them in the project. And the third one was the rural women who became real stakeholders because they started, becoming partners in growing nurseries and protecting the forest and started getting a livelihood out of that whole process. So that point was very important, that these stakeholders need to be involved for the project to be a success. The third is transparency. You need to have absolute credibility and total transparency in whatever you're doing. So in our project, while we had our own transparency mechanisms, which are usually done by the forest department and by the provincial department and then the federal government department, but we did something different. We involved a third-party independent auditor to check our project. In the first project, it was WWF, and then in the second, the larger project, it is FAO, IUCN, and WWF combined. They have become the performance auditors of this project. So they gave a yearly report on whatever somebody on the ground, the forest department is saying, and in the ministry we know that it is credible because it is being checked by an independent third-party assessment. So I think that's thirdly, transparency is very important. And lastly, I think what is important is that you need to have the right planning model, but it should have flexibility in it. And I'll tell you why. When we started the first billion plantation, it was designed to be 60% of new forests, so afforestation, and 40% of putting money in the natural forest for their protection. But what we realized, a year and a half down the line was that it is much cheaper, more effective, and the best way to do it is to do it through what is called assisted natural regeneration. So you involve the communities to protect nature and allow nature to come back. And it really comes back with the speed that you cannot plan for. The speed that we had planned, it doubled when nature rebounds with a speed which was double that, which was astounding for us. And it was so astounding that we had actually put in 22 billion rupees for this big project, billion project, and we ended up by only spending 14 billion and reaching our target. And that happened because nature became an ally rather than an adversary in this whole process. So I think those are the lessons from Pakistan. And the TRI project, which is in the Chalgoza area, is really one of the success stories under that whole initiative. And it has shown that when you involve the communities, put your trust in nature, there are lots of paybacks. I mean, you get paid back in ways you cannot even imagine. I mean, one of the very strange ways in which we got paid back in addition to the green jobs we were getting, in addition to the livelihood improvement for the people that we were getting, and obviously in addition to the carbon sequestration and the watershed management that we were getting, was the political dividend. When we were investing in this billion trees in one of the provinces, our political party was the only party which was doing this. And when it was doing this, whenever we used to post this on the social media, we used to get a spike in our response, which showed that the young people who were outside of that province wanted us to do that. They got psyched in, and that allowed us to come to government in the whole of Pakistan because those young people voted for the party which was, going green. So I think that was a very big payback for us, and we've continued on that path, and we hope that, we think this is the real way forward to keep on investing in nature. Even during COVID, we did the same thing. When we got stuck in lockdowns, I went to my Prime Minister, I told him that, let's learn from history, and the history showed us that the US had done it, that when they were in depression, they got out of it by investing in nature, by investing in young people going into nature. So we looked at that model and we announced a green stimulus, which is now on the ground. It has already employed 85,000 people, and these are people who were out of job because of lockdowns. So we got them into, going to protected areas, marking out trails, protecting the forest from forest fires, setting up nurseries, and getting a decent payout of it. So that allowed us to even, in the time of COVID, in a time of depression, to do something which was not only good for nature but also good for the economy. So I think these are the lessons which we have from Pakistan. And as I said, in one line, it's if you really truly invest in nature, you get paid back very soon.
Thank you, Malik. And you took up my wrap-up phrase is nature pays back, and I think that's a great phrase for all of us, and a great list of lessons that are coming through from Pakistan, and that range from not just the types of interventions but also the political will, but the political returns that you're achieving from restoration. So I'm going to go to Guinea-Bissau. We did have Justin on the screen. He was a very busy man, but can we have Justin or Lorenzo on the screen from Guinea-Bissau? Justin, hi. How are you? Yes. Well, welcome. I hope you've been able to hear from us and hear those great examples from Kenya and Pakistan of the lessons that have come from the Restoration Initiative, and how we're driving restoration, and the key things that are making it actually happen on the ground. And we heard a lot about political will and local communities. Can you give us what's been the driving force in Guinea-Bissau to actually seeing some of those examples that we saw in Guinea-Bissau in the wonderful rice fields, and how they're restoring the functionality around those?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello? Ngabre kuza. Na upende. Ndani kau lagi menagel.
We've got you on camera, Justin. You're looking good. So, but we can hear you as well.
Yeah. Okay, it's coming. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you for inviting us. Unfortunately, I don't want to speak in English because my English is very hoarse. I'm going to try in French. It's okay? Hello? Hello? Hello. Okay. Is it okay, Benjamin?
Corey, is everything okay?
Okay.
Corian, can we have...
Good. Hello?
I don't think we have translation. No, we don't have translation. No. I'll try.
JP? Hello?
Hello, Justin, can you hear us? If not, we're going to give up on technology, and I think we'll just go back to where we are, and we'll have to disconnect. Okay. Sorry. Corey, can we disconnect? Can we just disconnect, and we'll just use the panelist here, I think. Okay, so I have a question to both of you. Malik, perhaps I can start with you and then get Mohammed to respond. So we learn a lot about the lessons from TREE and how TREE, the GEF funding, has supported delivery. But actually, one of the big things that we're hearing here in the many events now is the need for accelerated finance for climate change, accelerated finance for nature, accelerated finance for restoration of the multifunctionality. So where do you, based on those experiences that you outlined, where do we see other financing coming from to help you drive to raise your ambitions with restoration and making sure that nature continues to pay? Should be now.
Is this working?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the other good side of the story that I want to share with you, and that is, that's my own belief, that when you start investing in nature, you get funds from places you never dreamed of, actually. You just have to take the right step. And it is my belief, after being, a minister and seeing what has happened in Pakistan over this period, and I'll just relate to you in factual terms what that is that when you really invest in nature and you do it with the right commitment and passion, you're actually doing God's job. And when you do that, God helps you. I mean, it helps you. He helps you in ways which are not planned. And I'll share the Pakistan example that, we started this project, the first billion trees, and it was about $150 million worth of outlay for the project. And as I said, the project cost came down by about 40% because of nature regeneration happening. And so we actually had to return the money that had been allocated by our own government for nature protection, because nature was rebounding and regenerating itself in a much faster way than what we had expected. But then when we got onto the 10 billion tree, we allocated about $1 billion for that over a five-year outlay, which included, going after the first 3.5 billion trees. That is already happening. We've already spent almost 25% of that money and achieved a target of $1.5 billion trees in Pakistan. But what is now happening is that we've been approached by partners who want to become a part of this project. And we are looking at, now Pakistan has, in the last 1 year, got money from 4 different sources. These were all unplanned. The first was when we announced the green stimulus to go at look at focus on nature, protection and green jobs. We got a $120 million outlay from the World Bank towards supporting this green stimulus. And this is money that is now, this month going to be on the ground, starting injecting projects on the ground, including this tree plantation activity, which will protect nature but also give out green jobs. We floated our first green bond about 2 months back. It was for $500 million. Now that green bond is for renewable energy in Pakistan. It got oversubscribed 6 times. And one of the reasons for that was that the green image that we got out of investing in these trees helped us at the global capital market in raising financing for renewable energy. There was an interest, there was credibility in what Pakistan was saying. So there was an oversubscription of 6 times for the $500 million that we went out to the market for. Number 2, we are looking at blue bonds. Why that has happened is because of this project. 30% of this project is on the mangroves in Pakistan's southern coastline. Today, Pakistan is the only country in the world with an expanding mangrove cover. So again, we went to our partner. We wanted to get that valuation done for those mangroves. And the blue carbon valuation for the mangroves was recently done, which is about $2.5 billion estimation by the World Bank. Now they are helping us float a blue bond to make sure that that natural asset stays as it is and generates income for the country. And the third one is the most innovative one, which is called a nature bond. We are the first country in the world piloting a nature bond. What a nature bond is, that it is linking, it's a more refined version of a debt to nature swap. So it's basically linking the group of countries who are looking at debt relaxation for developing countries because of COVID, climate change, a lot of other reasons, and linking it with nature performance. So we are saying that we are one of the 76 countries which would like the debt to be relaxed, but we are the only country which is saying that, okay, if you do this, we are going to invest that money in nature, and we are going to do it with clear performance indicators. So that's a work in progress, but I think that's an idea whose time has come, because I was just at the climate summit in the UK preparing for COP26, and all the developing countries that there were about 40 ministers over there, and all of them was calling for this something of this sort to come out, because they were saying that, you know, we are hit by climate change, which is obviously reaching a tipping point in most countries, and we are hit by COVID, which was totally unplanned and has squeezed the economies of all countries and developing countries. And on top of it, we are hit by the debt crisis. So, you know, a country hit by climate change, which is sapping out infrastructure in that country, and COVID, which is squeezing the economy, cannot afford to pay back the debt. So these three, you know, it's a perfect storm for any country to go down. And they were looking for an instrument which could save them. And I proposed over there that, you know, this is something that we are doing, that we want to link nature performance with debt reduction, so that case of at least two of the three problems that these countries are facing. So I think these are the innovative financial instruments and the financial mechanisms which have helped us. But as I said, you know, when we started investing in nature, we were not doing it because we thought this would happen, but it has happened, and it again shows that you know, this is the right direction for the world to take, and irrespective of the costs that you seem are too humongous when you start putting your money on this aspect. It is the right path, and if you take the right path, you get the right help.
Just Mohammed, just before I have one just follow-up question is you made an interesting point there, Malik, about you get your returns, but one of the challenges, those returns can be over a slow period. So how have you managed to deal with that through these different innovative finances?
I would not say, you know, if you're only looking at the return in terms of say carbon sequestration or a tree growing up and then, you know, giving you food or shelter or watershed, then yes, they are in long term. But there are returns which are short term also. For instance, green jobs. You know, the billion trees produce half a million green jobs. This initiative, that is the 10 billion tree project, has already produced about 200,000 jobs. These are jobs that you need to give out to your to boost your economy. So these jobs are for people who are setting up nurseries in their backyards in rural landscapes, or people who are planting mangroves in you know, areas where development has not reached in Pakistan, are getting paid, and they get paid for protecting the forest, for protecting against forest fires in their hometowns. And for them, that is a big thing. And when they get paid, the economy gets a boost. You know, it's a whole cycle that starts churning out. It's the green growth model which starts happening. So this investment, when you put it, I agree. Yes, you know, there are some parts of it which would be medium and long term, but then there are some parts which are very short term and which give an immediate return back to the economy.
People put forward on restoration that your returns are going to be too long, but it's great to hear that you're seeing those benefits. So Mohammed, you've heard of innovative financing and different categorizations of the global challenges at a national level. So what's the future financing that you see for restoration in Kenya?
I think apart from what government has been putting, a number of sources have come up. One is as a response to recovery from COVID. Government has employed 200,000, and majority of them, either they are doing the cleanup or they're doing the plantation of trees in the various different counties. The other source is we've come up with something called adapting forest or a space, and we are getting private sector, you know, the big companies beginning to adapt certain amounts of hectares. we don't know how much, I don't have the right figure, but it's really increasing. And then also government ministries. But then we have also schools program. It's been put in the curriculum, and all schools have plots that they do. And then we have something else which was put in the law, that 10% of your land, whether it's private or government, you should plant trees. So we haven't completely succeeded in that, but it's catching up now, because we are saying every area you must show the 10% of your land. So you can put fruit trees if it is your farm, you can put, and that is another form of financing. And then the carbon is just coming in now. A number of communities have receiving regular income from mangrove. We have a few projects. And now it's going to the pastoral area where pastoralists who have managed to do grass, they're about to get $3 million a year dollars. And once the communities realize that, they already were getting the dividends. The land was almost bare. They restored it with grass, and now they are using it, but they are sustaining it, and now they're about to get the carbon, income from it through what we call an RT. I saw the CEO somewhere in this workshop. So there are a variety of areas that then county governments are also coming in, putting in some money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you just, sorry, thank you. You just touched upon it, and my last question is, where do you see the role of to both of you? Where do you see? You outlined some of the challenges, but where do you see the role of restoration in the, as we say, building back better, in the green recovery of what we've seen with the pandemic over the last 18 months? So where do you see restoration, Mohammed?
For me, until it reaches Costa Rica and now Pakistan, where it's the whole population saying we want to restore, that's where the sustainability is, where people see the benefits on a continuous basis. As long as it is still projects, I don't think we are going anywhere. It should go beyond projects. Projects are good for lessons, for showing, but for real sustainability is to change the mindset of our populations, particularly the political elite, and they see this as, because at the moment, politicians, so what they see as a development is dispensaries and hostels and roads and all that. Until people see environment also as part of development, then we are still going to have problems.
Thank you, Mohammed, and Malik.
Well, I feel that when you talk about build back better, you cannot think about building back better without restoration. It's just not the equation which is there. And I think when the UN had thought about declaring 2020 to 30 as the decade on ecosystem restoration, COVID had not happened. But because of COVID, this seems to be just the right time for the right thing to be happening. Because COVID has shown us that what is going to happen if we do not invest in nature? What is going to happen if we don't restore our relationship, which is fractured with nature? And the answer is very clear, that nature is going to strike back, and nature has struck back. When we went into areas which were basically wildlife areas, meant for wildlife, we are not the only species in the world. There are other species who are going to survive, and they are not going to survive if we go into every nook and corner of the earth and think that this is human territory. And I think nature's revenge is something which humanity cannot sustain. That's the lesson of COVID. And I think the world has understood that lesson. What we need to now do is that you've got two other crises, the triple planetary crisis of climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss. We are pushing the threshold on all three of them. And we need to, step back, let nature restore. Because if we don't, I think we have, the lesson of COVID would be even more ferocious from nature if we don't step back. So I think to answer your question very simply is that there is no build back without restoration. It is the key which is going to take us into the 21st century.
Thank you very much. And thank you to both of you. Added questions and extra time as we didn't have the bandwidth to bring our friends from Guinea-Bissau on board. I thought, for myself personally, it was a fascinating presentation from the tree team to give the background and the context, the video showing of what I've done, but actually I'd also like to thank the both of you for fantastic panelists of actually covering a very long suite of different things. I started making a list of the role of farmers, the role of direct interventions, the different ecosystem interventions, the political will, but the political returns, the economic returns. I think it's a vast array of experiences and learning in there. So thank you both very much, and thank you all for coming. I think for me it's been an excellent panel. But this isn't in the end. Actually, we have a reception at the back there, so you're more than welcome to join. And if Malik and Mohammed are staying around for 5 or 10 minutes, are free to ask any questions, or to Christoph and Benjamin from the team. You're more than welcome to stay, have a drink, and try and relax after a very intense day. So thank you all very much.